Hello everyone and welcome back again. My name is Keith Gebhart, and in this lecture we're going to discuss the DNS protocol. Domain name system, or DNS, is a protocol which provides a means for a device to translate a naming system into its associated IP address. It used to resolve IP domain names to the web server it is trying to communicate to, the IP address. DNS uses either the TCP or UDP transport layer protocol, and it uses port 53 to establish a connection. DNS works by taking the domain name you entered into the URL on a web browser and sends that packet information to the DNS server which it resides on your network. The DNS server will then look up the domain name to the server's IP address it needs to be sent to and then forwards that packet back to the computer telling him the information. The computer will use this information and the service IP address information as the destination IP information in the packet and send it off to the server. And these examples, you could see how someone types in Amazon.com and it gets sent to the DNS server. And the DNS server translates it to the IP address. And then you could see the same thing where it's happening with Google.com as well. Looking at this example here, we can see we are on our web browser. So if this is our web browser up here and we just typed in example.com, we don't know what the IP address of this is. So this is going to go through the network down to our DNS server, which is down here. He's going to look in his table, which will tell him which IP address is associated to that domain name. And then he's going to send this information back to our computer. He's then going to say, okay, well, if, say he's 2.130's IP address. So his source IP address will be 2.130. And then the destination IP address in this packet will now be what? The 2.134, because that is where it needs to go to. So the computer will then rebuild his packet information with the appropriate IP information and send this information right back down to the web server. This is where that three-way handshake would take place, and then they can establish a connection together. Now, normally when we use DNS, it's going to use the UDP protocol because we're not worried about the reliability of data being transmitted. So the first port that might be open, so source destination port for DNS is 53 for destination. The source, maybe it's going to be 1030. Well, when it starts coming back and then he goes to make a TCP connection, this TCP connection to the web server is now going to change. Our source port is going to go from 1030 maybe to 1032, and then our destination port will be 80 that connects us to our HTTP web server. Okay, just wanted to point that out a little bit just so you have an understanding of how that's really working. Let's go ahead and open up our packet tracer and take a look at this in more detail. The first thing I want to do is add another server. We're going to add a dedicated server on here, which we're going to make as our DNS server. So we could just put two of them over here. In fact, we could just move a few things around here and make it a little nicer. I like keeping it neat when I'm building labs, okay? So we'll just do it this way. Okay, so I'm just gonna name this 192.168.1.20. We could 1.30 works, and I'm just gonna hyphen DNS. Okay, now we could create a website. We're gonna make a website on this guy, and I'm just gonna name him LTT.com. Okay, something simple, nothing crazy. And now we could just plug in that server to our into our switch. It does not matter which port. Just going to go into port 5. And I'm going to click on this server. Okay, I got to address it first off. So let's go in here and address this server. It's going to be 192.168.1.30. And default gateway is 192.168.1.1. Now, this is going to be our DNS server. So what do we got to do? Let's go ahead and just give it the 192.168.1.30 address for the DNS server. Okay. Now, another thing we got to do is change the addressing on this server over here. We got to tell it 192.168.1.30. And we're going to tell our PC 1.10 the same thing, just so everything's done across the board here, 1.30. And we have this computer right here we'll do while we're at it, 192.168.1.30. Okay, so that is all good as far as addressing. But we need to set up our DNS services on here. So let's go to services on the DNS server. And we're going to just go down here on the left-hand side and click DNS. And we're just going to give it a name. We're going to give it a record, a resource record. And we're just going to do L as in Lima, TT.com. Okay, and in fact, let's do www.ltt.com. The address for this is of the server that we are reaching, the server where this web page will reside on. So that's going to be 192.168.1.20 because this is the server that we're using as our web server, right? We said it's going to be ltt.com. So we got to associate that IP address to its name, which will be ltt.com, and we're just going to click add. Now that that's in there, we just need to hit the on option here for the DNS, and we can go ahead and close that out. Now I'm going to go ahead and just take this computer, and first of all, I'm going to ping this 1.30 computer because it needs to build it in its ARP table. 192.168.1.30. Now this is a step you normally wouldn't have to do. I'm doing it so when we sniff the packet, it makes it a little bit quicker and we're not waiting so long. So I'm also going to ping the web server 192.168.1.20, and that is good. So we could go ahead and close the command line out. I'm going to open up our packet sniffer here. I'm going to go to my 1.10 computer, web browser, and let's take a look at this, www.ltt.com. And let's watch what happens with our packet. So you can see we are generating a DNS packet here. If I click on this, look what it's doing. It's using UDP. It's not using TCP. It does not need to use TCP to just learn a name. So let's go ahead and close this out, and let's auto capture this. Let's watch where it goes. It's going to go to the switch, and since it's using DNS, it needs to go where? To its server. So the packet goes down to its server. He's resolving that to the IP address. He's going to send that information back. He's going to send it back to our computer, and once the computer receives it, he's going to build a TCP connection. He's going to request a connection be made to the server, and then the server is going to reply back and start sending its data back. So right around here is when we start seeing the actual three-way handshake take place using TCP. But again, like I said, we're not going to go into that much. But if we go to the TCP segment here and we look at the layer 4, let me go to this one, and we look at the layer 4 information, which again, this is our transport layer protocol, which we've already discussed. You can see the TCP is now being used. The TCP protocol is now being used. Source port is anything over 1024 on my computer, and the destination port is 80, because now it's making a connection to the web server. If we go back to DNS again, we could just take a look at that, and you can see UDP is source port 125, destination port 53. So now you're getting to see how the ports are changing and how the actual layer 4 protocol, of our transport layer protocol, have been changing as well. Now, one other thing I want to point out is we are in DNS, so you can see that since it knows it needs to use 53 to access our DNS web server, you can see layer 3's IP protocol is destination IP address of our DNS server. But if we go back down here and look now where it's making our TCP connection, it knows it needs to make a connection to our 1.20 computer. All right, guys? So I hope you're able to see that a little bit easier in the actual lab environment here. So you learned what DNS is and how it works on our networks. You were able to see how to configure DNS in Packet Tracer for studying, and we were also able to watch the packets communicate the network so you could see how the packets are traversing our network when they need to use DNS. Now, if you have any questions, please use this time to ask your questions or leave comments. And remember, I will get back to you guys to help answer anything you have. And also, don't forget to check out Learn Tech Training on YouTube. Please subscribe, okay? Now, there's only a few videos up right now, but like I said, weekly we're going to be adding more lectures and videos, and they're going to be free for you. So they're essentially just free lectures, labs that we build, and also awesome promotional offers for future courses we offer. All right, guys, so I will see you in the next lecture.